I always wanted to be a poet when I was a child, and I thought I would be a poet. And now I'm seeing that what I'm doing is, I'm still a poet. A paperweight is a three-dimensional poem. You take the essence of something, you capture it, and it's frozen there forever in time like a poem. It's held there for someone to see and to view. And that gives me a great feeling that I'm still writing poetry with glass.
It's exciting to see the formation of what once was just glass in its molten state. It brings a lot of joy to know that I can bring something to life. Watching it grow, bringing out the beauty in a piece of glass, making a piece of glass bloom, or a butterfly captured forever in flight, or almost being able to take a scent off of a bloom from one of my paperweights.
I think the thing I really like about glass the most is its spontaneity. It just is so alive, and you can play with it, and it's done. I mean, every morning you open the ovens and there's pieces there, there's completed works there, and I got really addicted to that. And when I first started making glass, I could hardly sleep at night, thinking about the pieces in the oven, and I'd find myself up at 4 or 5 in the morning and in there handling these pieces while they're still hot.
The crystal encasement technique for crafting paperweights at Lundberg Studios is called California Paperweight Style. The name was coined in 1978 by James Lundberg, founder of the studio. This new expression was a cross-pollination between two antique styles, the Art Nouveau Tiffany ice pick techniques and the lamp-working procedures of the French paperweight. Steve Lundberg originally trained as the first apprentice to his brother James. Over the years, he has worked in all aspects of glassmaking at the studio. It was Steve's genius as an artist and designer to sculpt the images and create direct applications of complex three-dimensional designs into their paperweights.
In the beginning, when I was making paperweights, there was a point where I felt I was very stagnant, that everything was flat, that I really had nowhere else to go at that point. And I think I was on vacation in Mexico, and I was staring at a hibiscus flower, and I was wondering how I can get this depth, how I could do this. And just like a bolt of light, the idea struck me of implanting glass through crystal into the bottom layer. And I couldn't wait to get back to work to try this technique. And the first thing I actually did was a daffodil. I made the little trumpet part, poured hot molten glass over the base of the petals, and I implanted the little trumpet. And at that point, that was a very significant change in gaining more three-dimensionality. Looking back, our earlier work appears crude, but at the time we thought they were great. They thought that was the best thing that was being done, and that was the best our abilities could come up with. And we thought it was fantastic. But it's always good to look back and see where you were. It gives you a good idea of what you're doing now, and it's nice to have a history like that you can draw from.
Daniel Salazar began as an apprentice in 1974. Early on, he showed a great flair for design and has spent the last decade innovating and producing his own paperweight designs.
While I'm working with the glass and using my tools, I really love manipulating the glass and using it to my advantage. Being able to apply the crystal over each individual petal, laying down its leaves, making the stems, drawing them into the glass, and heating up one individual petal around the edge, and taking the pick and manipulating each little ruffle or petal to give it more of a lifelike quality. Using my torch and my simple tools, I'm able to create a work of art.
Lundberg Studios creates their own glasses from raw materials. More than 20 different formulations are used, requiring over 35 separate raw materials. After mixing, the raw glass is then charged into a melting furnace, where it will cook for 6 to 8 hours at 2,250 degrees. Once melted, the glasses are ready to make into canes. A first gather on the end of the pontil is drawn out of the furnace, similar to getting honey on a spoon. The molten glass needs to be rotated to remain on the end of the pontil. The glass is marvered or rolled on a flat surface in a dense white enamel powdered glass. When this glass is stretched out into a long thin cane, the enamel remains as a dense background for the next gather of color. Once the powders are fused to the surface, Steve cases the enamel by dipping into a pot of amethyst. After trimming the excess from the gather, the parison is slowly rotated into the mouth of the glory hole for reheating. Once in a molten state, the parison is put into a 12-rib optic mold. This will result in a cane with dark violet stripes on an amethyst background. With the ribs left in relief, the parison is submerged into optical quality clear glass, which gives depth to the detail in the final cane. Heating the glass and chilling the end is done to obtain a consistent temperature throughout the core. Similar to the consistency of taffy, the core is stretched out into a long, thin cane. This cane will be used as petals of a water hyacinth. Once complete, some canes are bundled together, reheated, and stretched out again and again over several days, multiplying the patterns and building up the layers while creating minute, intricate designs. Now Steve can begin to shape and build the paperweight. Steve selects and inspects the pre-made canes he will use for this weight called the water hyacinth. He draws out an initial gather of optical quality clear glass on the end of the pontil. This core is shaped into a pad. A gob of blue glass dropped onto the pad, forming an illusion of a pond as the background. The pad constantly needs to be centered to the pontil because of the fluid state of the glass. Once encased in crystal, the cane appears to double in size. Most of the canes need to be re-stretched to acquire a smaller diameter. This cane will be used as a vertical stem for the leaves. Steve creases the green glass, giving the lily pads veins and depth as they rest on the surface of the water. A surface mixing torch is used to heat the cane to over 1,000 degrees, allowing Steve to manipulate the glass. If at any time the work in progress cools to less than 800 degrees, it can explode. Therefore, Steve must return to the glory hole every 4 to 5 minutes. With the initial ground complete, Steve begins work on the water hyacinth. Decorating for more than an hour and a half requires intense concentration. Every detail Steve adds is magnified 2 times. Using the ribbed amethyst cane, Steve forms and applies the open petals of the lily flower. Once the cane has been applied to the surface, it can be articulated, pulled, and nudged until the desired image is realized. Years of decorating Tiffany-style vases helped prepare Steve for these delicate color and shape manipulations. He also takes an unheated cane and drags it through the molten glass, stretching the leaf to give it life. This one pistil is a segment created from 48 canes that were bundled together and redrawn. He is tapering this pistil to be implanted into the next layer of molten glass. Another gather of clear glass is dropped onto the pad and smoothed out while still hot. The stretched cane is inserted all the way down to the core, forming a stem for another leaf. Then the pre-made pistil is implanted into the molten layer. As the design sets up, the clear glass handle can be snapped off. The studio environment can, with 7 melting furnaces and 5 glory holes, be very hot. Lamp working parts for later insertion is another technique for building intricate designs. Steve is fashioning a closed flower bud by heating and layering the cane, often marving and sculpting to create the final bud. Steve draws a double gather of clear glass from the furnace. He will need a generous layer of glass to insert the bud. Quickly, Steve creates a hole in the surface for the bud to be implanted. The hole area is reheated and the bud is inserted. The bud sets up and he snaps off the crystal handle. He pushes the glass around the bud to seal it. This is a very delicate process. Air bubbles can easily be trapped in the glass as pressure is applied to form the glass around the bud. The work in progress is reheated in the glory hole. You can actually see the inset of the bud. Once more, a gather of clear glass is layered on and smoothed out. The entire paperweight is plunged into a furnace of clear glass for the final casing. This last gather will create a complete dome around the water hyacinth, magnifying all the intricate details. A cherrywood cup is used for the final shaping and blocking. Although the top of the weight is still very hot, The bottom of the weight requires additional heating to allow Steve to form the classic paperweight profile. The jack is used to begin to separate the piece from the pontil. A drop of water is placed carefully on the neck between the pontil and the paperweight. Once the weight is secured in the tongs, a single tap on the pontil separates the paperweight. The paperweight is placed in an oven to relieve any interior strain for a controlled cooling period of 8 to 10 hours. The brilliance of the colors are only visible once the paperweight is completely cooled. The exquisite formation of this water hyacinth is a paperweight that will last thousands of years and will remain for generations to enjoy. The following day, after the weight is cooled, it is taken to the finishing room. Here the rough pontil mark is removed with a concave facet. Steve and Danny often collaborate with master glass cutter Carol Trevis to choose special faceted windows or ribs that will further enhance and harmonize the interior motifs. In the early 70s, James became the first California glass artist to reproduce the colors and patterns of the highly acclaimed Tiffany Studios. Basically, these patterns were achieved by winding glass threads or adding small spots of colored glass to a base glass, and then reheating the entire piece in a glory hole to allow for the combining or pulling of these additions into patterns. Jim applied these aesthetics to the paperweight, and a new art form emerged. Later, he experimented with the sophisticated French paperweight techniques, thus opening the door to lampworking and the emergence of the California paperweight style. With the use of a surface mixing torch, he soon found that not only could he apply colors more selectively using pre-made colored rods, but that by using the torch, he could spot heat small areas of his work and pick more delicate and intricate patterns than before. Steve's and Daniel's work are different in many ways, as are their lives. Steve brings in his experiences of nature from the great outdoors. His work reflects the symmetry that he finds in nature, the way in which a flower fills in around the center, or the balance of leaves on a plant. His paperweights are precise. They are intricate, symmetrical, and alive. Steve and his family enjoy the outdoors, frequently camping and hiking in nature. Daniel's hobbies include gardening and painting. He enjoys working with his cactus collection and growing orchids. His paperweights reflect a more sculptural approach, using asymmetrical designs. Daniel's images are fluid and emotional. Daniel takes the individual details of flowers and artistically expresses the feeling of joy he has for life. In 1989, James developed the World Weight, which now accounts for almost half of all the production at the studio. This earth paperweight, using a complex powdered glass drawing and several layers of specially formulated glasses, represents yet another new style pioneered by Lundberg.
The idea for the World Weight came about at a meeting with the buyer for the Nature Company. This was the fall of 1988. Silver Raker said I should try to develop something with the earth as a theme. And driving home from that meeting, I was struck by the simplicity of doing the world in glass, but I wanted to do it like no one had ever done it before. I wanted a very realistic world, one that had oceans alive with currents, one that had land masses textured and varied. I wanted lush tropical rainforests, dry arid deserts, frigid polar caps. And I wanted to immerse the entire piece in a gaseous envelope. And I knew this was a tall order, and as I got back to my studio and looked around and started to prepare for this, I realized I had all these materials already developed. It was like they had been sitting here waiting for years just for this idea to come along. And the response to the World Weight has just been overwhelming, and it continually is renewing my motivation. And somehow I've touched a pocket, I've touched a nerve in humanity with this world weight. And when people hold this thing in their hands, they feel like there's hope for a healthy future.
Well, we did not want to be just another imitator of what's already been done. We tried to create our whole look, and I think it's our attention to detail and the subtlety in our coloring and the quality of Jimmy's glass has given us this look that separates us from the other paperweight makers.
Before I produce a paperweight, I have to make sure that I have all my parts that are necessary for producing that paperweight. My tools are set out on my table. My penny rods are set up. I'll have to pre-make certain components of that paperweight, whether it be a center for the gardenia, the center for the rose, a pre-made butterfly, which are all different stages of producing that paperweight. Initially, the first part of the paperweight will be very plain, very awkward, but each stage of that paperweight comes to life, finally filling in those gaps, giving it more of a lifelike quality.
I'm really proud and impressed by what Steve and Danny are doing with their glass. It just seems like yesterday that they were my apprentice, and now I'm looking over at them, looking over their shoulder while they're doing their crystal encasement, and I'm learning things.
Sometimes to get the right paperweight, I have to make 20 prototypes before I feel confident with the finished product. You can have a great idea, but you can draw it on paper, it looks great on paper, but making it for the first time in the paperweight never comes out right. And I'm very rarely really satisfied with the total image. I think as I work over the years, I could be making a piece for years and years, and I'll be subtly changing, what I feel are making improvements on the piece. Many times I'm at a show or an exhibition and someone will come up and go, "How do you do this? Are these flowers you have growing out in the backyard? You know, what do you do in the wintertime when there's no flowers?" I like to do things that when people look at it, they go, "Wow, how did he do that?"
Today, the works by Steve Lundberg and Daniel Salazar are in great demand worldwide and have gained steadily in value. Each piece is signed with a studio name, artist name, date, and registration number. Their work is very limited in volume, each artist producing less than 1,000 pieces each year, and can be found only in America's finest stores and catalogs, including Gump's and the Smithsonian. Their work is also represented in Germany, France, Holland, England, and Japan. Seen as a universal symbol, the world weight has been chosen by numerous international corporations and governmental agencies as awards of achievement or significant environmental contributions. The influence of Lundberg Studios can be seen in the works of many prominent glass houses. Lundberg Studios continues to be a leader in developing new designs and motifs, while examples of their work are included in almost every major museum and private glass collection.